So we need to talk about two things that I think church folks don't like to connect, and that's mentorship and desire. Recently, a young man named Johnny Flicks here on TikTok stitched one of my videos, and he was sharing his story about how an interaction with another church-going man felt a little off, uncomfortable for him after they had already exchanged IGs, and suddenly asked him how old he was. Now, you can watch his full video later, but he didn't have to make that face. But anyway, what he was describing reminded me of a term that we really don't talk enough about, and that's the word pederasty. Now, pederasty is a system in ancient Greece, or was a system in ancient Greece, where an older man would take or picked a teenage boy as both a mentee and a lot of times as a sexual companion. Now, this was legal because the idea was that the young man would go to this old man to learn philosophy, politics, and how to be a man, and everything else is just kind of par for the course. So let's talk about armor bearers. Now, in the Old Testament, David was probably the best example of an armor bearer. David was Saul's armor bearer, and Jonathan, Saul's son, also had another armor bearer. And from these two relationships, we can see that armor bearers tend to be younger men in training. Usually, they were not old enough to enlist, so that puts them right under the age of 20. Now, the role of an armor bearer is to assist in battle to a great general, and this is not something you could generally volunteer for. You had to be picked or chosen by a warrior or a king and assigned, and the assignment will be based on merit and class. Now, in today's world, today's church, we see that armor bearers tend to be men who are younger than the pastor and are responsible for carrying water, Bible bags, and sometimes secrets. Now, of course, there's more to that job, but when that relationship tends to be a little more private or one-sided or spiritualized without evidence of mentorship, that's when we see it starts looking a little bit like modern pederasty. Essentially, it looks like desire hiding behind discipleship. Now, 1 Corinthians 6:9 is often used against gay people, but the original Greek words Malakoi and Arsenokoitai, I think, need some context. Now, Malakoi means soft. Some people interpret it as what 1 Corinthians 6:9 was talking about when it says effeminate, but scholars also say that it likely refers to boys being sexually exploited or men who are morally immature. Arsenokoitai is a compound word for man and bed, but it wasn't a known Greek word before Paul used it. So most people agree that it really is referring to simple prostitution, and our key word for today, pederasty. And from this, we're left thinking that maybe Paul was not condemning homosexuality, but was actually confronting power and secrecy and spiritual exploitation. And come to think of it, we rarely see armor bearers in churches today take over the church or start a new church. And even more, we rarely talk about power imbalanced relationships. And to today's point, the blurred lines between mentors and mentees. So here's what I'm overthinking out loud about today. Do churches still need armor bearers, or can an assistant or a team be sufficient? How do we justify spiritualizing hierarchy in church and in politics? And to the straight man, do you think you should protect church boys the same way you protect women? Let me know what you think about all of this in the comments below.